mask shortages, overflowing hospitals. These are the images you see coming from hospitals in America.
Reusing PPEs are not acceptable. It's just not. That's not based on science. That's based on supply.
But why are hospitals in one of the wealthiest countries in the world struggling in this pandemic? To understand why so many U.S. hospitals have been caught short, we should start with the question, who runs America's hospital system?
The challenge of the U.S. healthcare system is that it's not one healthcare system. It's 50 different healthcare systems, one in each state. And within that, you essentially have hundreds or thousands of healthcare systems.
Around 1 in every 5 U.S. hospitals is government funded and run. More than half of U.S. hospitals are run by private corporations or nonprofits. Now, don't be fooled by the name. Nonprofit hospitals are indeed profitable. It just means they do enough charity to be tax exempt. The U.S. spends $3 trillion a year in healthcare goods and services. And if it were a country, U.S. healthcare would be the 5th largest economy in the world. Many private hospitals in the U.S. are run like businesses. And like any other business, hospitals are concerned about revenues and their bottom line. Proponents of healthcare reform have been calling out this model well before the pandemic.
The function of healthcare must not be, as is the case right now, for the drug companies and the insurance companies to make huge profits.
That system has consequences which affects patients, particularly the most vulnerable. The first thing that U.S. hospitals don't have enough of are beds. There are only 920,000 hospital beds in the U.S., and 65% of those beds are occupied at any given time. In the US, there are 2.8 hospital beds per 1,000 people. That's fewer than other countries hit hard by COVID-19.
We found that across the country, in almost every state, in almost every hospital market, that unless hospitals were able to create or free up existing hospital capacity, they would be on average 2 to 3 times more patients than available beds.
So why does the US, a country of over 300 million people, only have 920,000 hospital beds? Well, despite all that money flowing around, there are laws that limit how much hospitals can spend on things like more beds. They're called Certificate of Need laws, or CON laws. They aim to reduce healthcare spending and make hospitals cheaper to run. If profit is the imperative, then maintaining emergency bed space that goes unused most of the time doesn't make sense, unless a crisis hits.
The dominant storyline in health policy was the overuse of healthcare. We're doing too much healthcare because we had too many hospital beds, too many providers providing care that was creating demand and driving up overall healthcare spending.
It also means that before a hospital can purchase more ICU beds, for example, it needs to be approved by a state regulatory agency. The policy's intention of keeping hospital prices down may have backfired. Take New York, for example, the state with the most COVID-19 cases. Without CON laws, New York would have had 317 hospitals compared to 220 today. But lack of beds for patients isn't the only problem facing America's hospitals during this pandemic. By now, you probably know there's a major shortage of personal protection equipment, or PPE.
We've had this issue since the pandemic arrived that we were going to have to reuse our PPE, particularly the N95 mask. This has happened to me more than once when I go to work and I have a COVID patient that's in the room that I need to go and see, and I don't have a mask.
What Mewata is experiencing is a result of how the system is set up.
A lot of our healthcare systems run on an inventory system where things are delivered just in time. It's very efficient for running a hospital, not having to have a large stockpile of extra equipment. But that efficiency, I think, has hurt us. It works when you don't have a pandemic.
At a national level, the US has 12 million N95 masks and 30 million surgical masks in its emergency stockpile. That's only 1% of what medical professionals would need during a full-blown pandemic. Cost-cutting has come to characterize US healthcare policy. The American Hospital Association estimated federal cuts to hospitals will total over $200 billion by 2028. In 2016, the Trump administration slashed funding for pandemic preparation. This is despite a 2015 report that warned of a significant shortage of things like PPE, antiviral drugs, and ventilators in the event of a pandemic. These decisions trickle down to medical workers on the front lines.
We are nurses. We are there for our patients. We are there for our community, and we need the institutions that we work for to be there for us.
Half of the registered nurse workforce is 50 plus. More than 1 million nurses are expected to retire in the next decade, and shortage of over 55,000 primary care physicians is projected by 2032. To empty medical beds for COVID-19 treatment, hospitals have canceled non-urgent elective procedures. As a result, 42,000 healthcare workers have lost their jobs in March, just as COVID-19 was spreading across the U.S.
I just feel like this pandemic is an eye-opener for everybody, or at least it should be. We are in dire times. We need nurses. We need to preserve our staff. And when nurses are in a position where they don't feel safe, they're going to speak out.
As the pandemic worsens, states are having to compete for medical equipment, not just by outbidding each other, but also outbidding the federal government.
I think these are the three important lessons that we need to take from this. Is we need a much more robust testing and surveillance strategy that's coordinated across hospitals, states, and the federal government. We need the ability to dial up and dial down capacity and be able to pool that capacity. And the third part is we need the ability to produce and stockpile and distribute masks and respirators for the future.
But as frontline workers in hospitals continue to get overwhelmed,
the desert area of Iran, they heard that this morning that this rocket was launched into space. The satellite named Noor for light is now 425 kilometers above us, orbiting Earth. And we heard it straight from the head of the IRGC himself. This is for military purposes and is likely to be used for intelligence gathering, for military reconnaissance, for navigation and movements of military assets on the ground. All the things that leaders need to do to support their assets on Earth from an eye in the sky in space. So any questions there may have been about whether or not this satellite had military capability or not, the head of the IRGC, as well as the head of the Aerospace Division, has made clear that these are advances in military technology and will be used.
Development, allegations Iran denies. President Donald Trump in Washington, while not addressing the launch directly, did tweet a warning about Iran harassing American ships at sea. Here's what the head of the Revolutionary Guard said about the launch.
It is a necessity for such powerful defense forces like the Revolutionary Guard to have access to advanced capabilities. Today, the powerful armies of the world have no comprehensive defense plan if they don't have a place in space. Today, we can monitor the world from space, and it means boosting strategic data for the IRGC. Putting the satellite into orbit gives us a technological advantage, and is also a powerful asset in the intelligence war.
On Wednesday morning, the world awoke to news of a secret operation carried out by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards. From a launch site in Iran's central desert, it successfully used a two-stage rocket to put its first military satellite in space. The Noor, or Light, is now 425 kilometers above us, orbiting Earth. The head of the Revolutionary Guards says it gives Iran's military new strategic advantages.
It is a necessity for such powerful defense forces like the Revolutionary Guards to have access to advanced capabilities. Today, the powerful armies of the world have no comprehensive defense plan if they don't have a place in space. Today, we can monitor the world from space, and it means boosting strategic data for the IRGC. Putting the satellite into orbit gives us a technological advantage, and is also a powerful asset in the intelligence war.
Iran has put satellites in space before, but the success of the Noor comes after several failures in recent years. It's expected to be used for intelligence gathering, secure military communications, navigation and reconnaissance, whatever leaders need to support from the sky Iran's military assets on Earth. And the satellite isn't the day's only technological development.
The difference between this satellite and previous ones is that its propulsion uses a combined solid and liquid fuel. Only a few superpowers have this capability, only a few countries. The rest are consumers of this technology.
It's a proud moment for Iran's Revolutionary Guards. The group suffered a major setback to its reputation after the accidental shoot-down in
Malaysian Maritime Enforcement Agency confirmed that a Haiyang DC-8, a Chinese government research ship, and Chinese Coast Guard vessels were spotted last week conducting a survey close to an exploration vessel, operated by Malaysia's state oil company Petronas, months after it undertook a similar patrol off Vietnam. The Chinese vessel had also entered the Malaysia's exclusive economic zone. Malaysian authorities, including the Royal Malaysian Navy, are in constant monitoring of the activity of the ships in its territory, prompting a standoff. The area where the Chinese vessel has been detected is near waters claimed by both Vietnam and Malaysia as well as China. Chinese government has denied reports of a standoff, saying that their ship was just conducting normal activities in the area. Vietnamese Navy and Vietnamese Coast Guard are also monitoring the situation. The incident prompted the United States to call on China to stop its bullying behavior in the disputed waters, citing concern over Beijing's provocative actions towards offshore oil and gas developments in the Malaysian waters. The U.S. State Department has said that China was taking advantage of the region's focus on the coronavirus pandemic to coerce its neighbors. With Chinese, Malaysian, and Vietnamese ships are in a standoff in the South China Sea, the United States responded by deploying 3 warships. The USS America, an amphibious assault carrier, the USS Bunker Hill, a Ticonderoga-class Aegis cruiser, and the USS Barry, an Arleigh Burke-class Aegis destroyer to monitor the situation. The US said that it supports the efforts of their allies and partners, especially in Southeast Asia, to determine their own economic interests. Also, the Royal Australian Navy has confirmed that its Anzac-class frigate HMAS Parramatta has joined up with the United States Navy warships, currently on patrol in the South China Sea, near the standoff between Chinese and Malaysian vessels. Chinese aircraft carrier Liaoning was also spotted in the South China Sea, 300 nautical miles south of Hainan Island, is likely heading towards area of standoff between Chinese and Malaysian Coast Guard and exploration vessels. The Chinese are operating in disputed waters, about 200 nautical miles off the coast of East Malaysia, that are claimed by Malaysia, Vietnam, and China. The region is believed to be mineral-rich, and has been an active area of contention since the drill ship West Capella, under contract to Malaysia's state oil company, Petronas, began exploration activities in October 2019. Vietnam also protested after China said it had established 2 administrative districts on the Paracel and Spratly Islands in the disputed waters. The 2 districts have been reportedly placed under the control of the Chinese city of Sansha. Beijing also established 2 research stations on its artificial islands, in the Fiery Cross and Subi reefs, which are claimed by the Philippines. It also established a mental health facility in Mischief.
Nearly 3,300 inmates have tested positive for the coronavirus in 4 U.S. prisons. 96% of those infected showed no symptoms. The numbers are the latest evidence suggesting that people who are asymptomatic and contagious but not physically sick are driving the spread of the virus.
We've discovered basically already in the matter of 2 or 3 days, 500 prisoners who were positive, who previously had not been reporting symptoms or who had, any issues that they were reporting to us which would have caused us to test them.
The U.S. has more prisoners than any other country in the world. More than 2.3 million are behind bars, according to a 2017 report. According to Reuters, 30 state prisons that responded to their survey were only testing inmates who showed symptoms, suggesting that the number of inmates infected by the coronavirus could be much higher. Families of the inmates and activists have previously called on the U.S. government to free inmates to protect them from the COVID-19 outbreak. 1,300 inmates have tested positive for the coronavirus in 4 U.S. prisons. 96% of those infected showed no symptoms. The numbers are the latest evidence suggesting that people who are asymptomatic and contagious but not physically sick are driving the spread of the virus.
We've discovered basically already in the matter of 2 or 3 days, 500 prisoners who were positive, who previously had not been reporting symptoms or who had any issues that they were reporting to us which would have caused us to test them.
The US has more prisoners than any other country in the world. More than 2.3 million are behind bars, according to a 2017 report. According to Reuters, 30 state prisons that responded to their survey were only testing inmates who showed symptoms, suggesting that the number of inmates infected by the coronavirus could be much higher. Families of the inmates and activists have previously called on the US government to free inmates to protect them from the COVID-19 outbreak.
The U.S. Navy confirmed on April 22 that 3 U.S. warships traveled to the South China Sea in support of security and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. It was later reported that an Australian frigate joined the 3 warships. According to the U.S. Defense Department, the Australian warship HMAS Parramatta exercised with the U.S. warships in the South China Sea over the past few days. A spokesperson for the Defense Department said the HMAS Parramatta has been undertaking an extended deployment throughout South and Southeast Asia for the last 2 months to help strengthen the stability and security of the region. The ships reportedly practice aviation operations, communication drills, and maritime maneuvers. Although the military drills in the region come at a time when tensions in the South China Sea have risen, defense experts say the collaboration between Australia and the US would have been planned months ago. China has been building administrative bodies and research stations on the islands in the South China Sea, including 2 in territory claimed by the Philippines and other nations. The U.S. Defense Department said Australia has maintained a robust program of international engagement with countries in and around the South China Sea. According to ABC News, Australian officials have been observing Beijing's activities in the highly contested area. The 3 U.S. warships and Australian frigate arrived near the Chinese government survey ship Haiyan DG-8. Malaysia's Petronas State Oil Company is also conducting exploratory drilling in an area close by. The 3 U.S. ships in the South China Sea were the USS America Amphibious Assault Ship, the guided missile cruiser USS Bunker Hill, and the destroyer USS Barry. Reuters reports that the Haiyan DG-8 was accompanied by a Chinese Coast Guard vessel, and the 2 have been moving in a pattern consistent with a seismic survey. The U.S. has asked China to stop its bullying behavior in the area, but China says the Haiyan DG-8 has not been doing anything unusual except for its normal activities. China has received widespread criticism for increasing its hold on the South China Sea during the coronavirus pandemic. However, they have also been donating medical supplies to other countries struggling with the virus, which was first detected in the Chinese province of Wuhan in 2019.
tutte le contrarietà del tempo presente, abbandonando fitte tenebre si sono addensate sulle nostre piazze, strade e città. Si sono impadronite delle nostre vie, riempiendo tutto di un silenzio assordante e di un vuoto desolante, che paralizza ogni cosa al suo passaggio. Si sente nell'aria, si avverte nei gesti, lo dicono gli sguardi. Ci siamo trovati impauriti e smarriti. Ci siamo resi conto di trovarci sulla stessa barca, tutti fragili e disorientati, ma nello stesso tempo importanti e necessari, tutti chiamati a remare insieme, tutti bisognosi di confortarci a vicenda. Su questa barca ci siamo tutti, tutti.
লাইক কমেন্ট শেয়ার করার অনুরোধ থাকলো। চ্যানেলটি সাবস্ক্রাইব করতে পারেন, বেল আইকনে ক্লিক করে পরবর্তী ভিডিওগুলোর নোটিফিকেশন পেয়ে যাবেন।